I think it would be a great time to highlight right now interests that if we had a public bank already, we could be actively supporting through New Mexico to help support New Mexicans through the pandemic. So I already mentioned the Small Business Recovery Act, but we're doing everything from, mortgage, foreclosure avoidance, food insecurity, shelter insecurity. We've established funds throughout, the Navajo Nation and other indigenous people's funds and support. So sorry, someone keeps on trying to call me. And we're actually looking to invest in broadband infrastructure expansion. I was just on the Rural Technology Council Interim Committee meeting talking about various homegrown New Mexican tech corps that are working on solving the digital divide problem that, if we could invest in that immediately, we could actually have 100% internet coverage throughout the state, which would be a game changer for our children who are trying to get educated online right now as they sit at home trying to get through this pandemic the same way all of us are. So, a public bank would be instrumental in being able to invest in those things without having to get through the red tape of going through the SIC and the appropriations process. So I like the fact that the public-private partnership was mentioned because, and when we find ourselves in this hyper-partisan atmosphere and during a campaign year, and we've politicized issues that have no business being politicized, this shouldn't, just because it has the word public in the title, it shouldn't make this a politicized issue. This actually would work for New Mexicans and private industry to just do good things for our state. And so I think, again, that's the narrative that it's important for us to take on and to champion as we go into the upcoming legislative session. And the public bank can be whatever we make it to be. That's the power of legislating and policy making. So it may not look exactly like what they've done in South Dakota, but we would have the opportunity to make it our own and make sure it works for the people of New Mexico and the state.
Okay. Sarah, was there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Certainly. First of all, when the PPP loans came out, North Dakota decided to have the Bank of North Dakota administer all those loans. And because of their lower costs and they're much more efficient, they've already established this network with all of the banks. They were able to have the average PPP loan to be issued at an average of $5,000. In New Mexico, that same figure was $3,500. So it's the same loan, and we got less money per person who applied for it, which was too bad. Please do Google the Bank of North Dakota. They have put out an annual report that's very well written, and you will be astounded at how much money they make.
And if I could I just add one more point on that? That just reminded me. A piece of anecdotal evidence, but I think we all lived it. When the federal PPP program rolled out, I think sometime in late March, early April, and we started seeing in the newspapers that folks couldn't get access to these loans because there were only a few banks because you had to apply through a specific bank, and then the bank did the application through the federal government for you. And we had this situation where if you didn't have a pre-established relationship with the bank that was doing the PPP loans, you couldn't get access to the loan. And so the first tranche of funding that went through was eaten up, I think, in a couple of weeks. And it kind of established this artificial hierarchy that people who had pre-established relationships with banks arbitrarily, with these specific banks arbitrarily, got access to the money while the rest of the state was hurting. That would not have happened in New Mexico if we had had a public bank administering these loans. As simple as that. So, that's a perfect example of where a public bank could be so powerful and make such a difference.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Okay,
It
great.
really goes to show us, doesn't it, that COVID is a nightmare, but it's also an opportunity. And we have to rebuild in a sustainable and whole new manner with new paradigms. That's a beautiful example to bring up, Day. This is really important. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question is from Carl Peterson. And he asked, does the data show that when a new state bank is formed, the state's GDP is positively influenced? And what is the time period for this improvement to be noted? Sure, Susan, go ahead.
Sarah, you got an answer?
Sarah.
I got an answer. A state bank has not been established since North Dakota State Bank was established. So the answer is we don't know. However, we'll be keeping records, and in 20 years we'll be able to say, oh, okay, yeah, that was a good decision, and I'm quite sure of that. But we don't have. That's just not a question that's answerable right now.
So North Dakota started their public bank at 108 years ago, right?
Something like that, yeah, over 100
GDP
years.
may not have even been a metric yet defined. So that's to your point. Yeah.
Okay, great. So then we've got a question from Wendy Parker Wood. I think that this might be an add-on to the question before it. So let me ask this first question. Would the bank be used to, quote, unquote, sell New Mexico investment bonds? Can you elaborate on the sale of these bonds? Would common people be able to invest in these New Mexican bonds?
No, the state bank would not be issuing investment bonds. It would be instead investing in communities and in businesses, and however the legislature directs it to invest. Its purpose is to keep money circulating. And we think that the issuance of bonds will actually decrease because the state bank can actually replace many of them. When you issue any bond, you're adding to the cost of essentially a loan by about 40%, because that's what the bond industry requires to approve the bond, make the bond, sell the bond, administer the bond, all of that stuff. And so I'm not sure that is something that, we've not talked about the state bank issuing bonds at all. It could help with school districts issuing bonds. It could put together consortiums of banks are limited to what they can borrow by their capitalization and their size. And so if it's a large need, the bank could possibly put together a group of banks where they all pool their money and they issue the money that the school district needs as a loan, not as a bond, which is a much cheaper way to do it.
Okay, wow, this is complicated stuff. But I can see from the faces of the people up on the computer that they're eating this up. They are absolutely getting this. So then the question, I think it is a follow-on, and Wendy, you'll help me out. You'll mute yourself if I get this wrong. You ask, or will the loans be purchased by institutional entities? I'm thinking public banks do not enlist credit agencies to rate these loans. Did I get that right, Wendy? You need to unmute.
Yeah, I'm having a little difficulty with this concept because I come from a totally different area, so I apologize. But what I'm trying to figure out is the public bank basically the administrator of funds that are provided through the state, and they provide oversight for how that is spent, and they're issuing loans to different municipalities. Do you have other entities that are investors that purchase those loans? I am really at a loss, confused on how this situation works when I relate it to how possibly Wall Street takes 40% above and beyond the cost of the loan, which I also am not completely sure of. But anyway, I just don't understand the concept. Who is the administrator? Where do the funds come? Where do they go? And who are the other entities involved besides the bank? That's my question.
As an overview, the state of New Mexico has two entities that manage money. One is currently, and this is it's a short-term contract. It gets reviewed all the time, but currently it is the Wells Fargo is our fiscal agent. So they process the checks. They do what you would do with a banker with your need for loans, etc. The other one is JP Morgan Chase, which is our investment broker. So the public bank would not have anything to do with the investment side, because that's the money, and those are the commercial bonds and the municipal bonds. That's the money that leaves the state. Wells Fargo is going to invest its excess money where they see fit, and they'll just do what they need to do. What is going to happen is that some of the money, to begin with, that would be deposited with Wells Fargo instead would be diverted, would be invested in the state bank, and it is an investment. The money that is used to capitalize the bank will always be there. That's not ever loaned out. That is the basis for the credit of the bank. And over time, it may be that our fiscal agent will change, but the state has a large need to be able to issue checks. And that's kind of an area that the public bank is not envisioned to go into at this point. It well could change in the future, but we're going to have to get used to having a public bank at the state level. And so it's going to start small, and then as the state gets used to having it and we know what our needs are, then it will grow. Paul, do you have any additional comments on that?
No, I think you've done a good job explaining it.
Okay.
Certainly is, and maybe I know that the question is trying to get at, I think anyway, the question is trying to get at who administers the loans. If that is the direct question, banks and credit unions administer the end loan. The public does not. The public bank could have funds available to those community banks and credit unions, or could help guarantee the community banks and credit unions lending. But the public bank would never be the maker of a loan to a business or an individual or that kind of situation. So maybe that's the question, but I know there's a number of different answers here, but I think we've covered the waterfront, but if not, we can try again.
Hey,
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a quick interruption, sorry. I know that Representative Hochman-Vigil needs to leave exactly at 1, if not a minute or so before. So are there any other questions? They can hop in front on the legislative or political side of public banking that you guys would like to ask Day.
Well, there's a question in the chat, and I think it can be changed a little bit to see if there would be some controls over this, if it would even be advisable. And the question is, large institutions like Chase, Wells Fargo, Citibank, and Wall Street institutions continue to invest and fund the destructive, dirty fossil fuel industry. Will a public bank in New Mexico avoid fossil fuel investments? And I'm just wondering if that's something that could be legislated up front.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's a good question. And so just to reiterate what I said before, I mean, this could be whatever we make it. That's the beauty of crafting policy and legislating. So, if we wanted to put specific restrictions and limitations in mind as to how a public bank can invest or fund itself, then we absolutely may do that.
I've got a question I'd like to ask you, Day. So what can the general public, what can people do to help garner some support and get more information out on this to kind of tee it up for January?
Oh, I love this question for you, Day, because you're so fantastic at like actually making a difference instead of just yelling at everyone that you feel opposed to. So I look forward to your answer on this.
Yelling at people isn't all bad.
Thanks, Claudia. So you get to yell at people a lot more if you're in a safe district. You'll learn that, Claudia.
I am not.
But so yeah, like I said, I'm a collaborator. I'm a problem solver. That's what I do in my daily job professionally. And so really the legislative process is about collaboration and bringing coalitions together to kind of meet and find where everybody agrees and meet in the middle and kind of work from that angle. So at the same time that we're deploying, policymakers and, everybody that's supportive of this idea to the Capitol, probably even before the session starts, start having these conversations with legislators. And if they have a collaborative approach like I do, and many do actually, they will bring in the various interests to their offices to start having these conversations to craft any amendments or changes to the bills necessary to kind of get an idea of how we actually get this thing through the process. And it is a process, and it is a very difficult process, but it's meant to be. So where the public can come in is, writing your legislators, going to the nmlegis.gov website, figuring out who actually represents you, and start sending them emails. I support the idea of a public bank. I've heard about, HB, whatever, we're going to assign the number to it. And I hope that you will support that too, because legislators have to listen to their constituents. And so if you have a growing voice of people and behind a strongly worded email, not saying like you better do this, but like, hey, I think that during the COVID crisis, a public bank makes a lot of sense. That's the first way to kind of build that support. And like I said, again, I don't know what the legislative session is going to look like in January, if we're going to be legislating for 2 months over Zoom. I really hope not. Just thinking about that makes me nauseous. But I think that, paying attention to where we are, what committee assignments the bill will get, showing up for committee, testifying at committee, standing up and saying, I really believe in this idea. That's how you get your voice heard. And I'm actually going to be, hopefully in conjunction with Indivisible Nob Hill, putting on a seminar about how to effectively lobby as a citizen, so that we can really get people organized on, how you can make the most use of your time and make your voice as big as it can be, so that people who are making the decisions pay attention. So yeah, are there any other questions, or is it okay if I sign off a couple minutes early? I'm so sorry.
Sure, no, that's fine. Day, I just want to thank you again. I really appreciate, I know you're extremely busy, an hour is a big chunk of time, but you've added so much to this. It's really enriching. And I look forward to that seminar in conjunction with Indivisible Nob Hill. So thanks so much.
And like I said, it's a pleasure, Claudia, and thanks for asking me. And, I'm just going to put on a quick plug too. Like, the fact that I have to go is a direct symptom of the fact that we're the last voluntary legislature in the country. I have a full-time job. I have a family to support, and I wouldn't have to go early if we actually paid our legislators. So I'll leave you guys with that.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Day.
Charlotte.
Very, very much.
I love you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Day.
I love you too. I will add that Day is one of and there are a lot of legislators, and Claudia will be one of them, that, as a constituent talking with your legislators, we have one of the most accessible legislators in the country, if not the most accessible. So I know I've accidentally found myself in meetings that I felt very underqualified to be in, because our legislature culture is one that says, if I do the work to reach out and look out for you and ask how I can help and keep that ball moving, I'm going to get invited to these really crazy meetings where I'm surrounded by powerful people who want to make change and they want to hear my voice. So if you don't feel qualified to do that, you should, and reach out to me. I'll give you a pep talk, and I'll give you your legislator's phone number, because it's worth it and it's worth the work, and you can make a difference, just you as a normal person. You don't have to be a legislator or a campaign manager to be that. So I like that you asked that question, Claudia, and I stand behind her answer there. I think it's totally true. So we are almost at 1 o'clock, which I don't know what our end time was, about 1 o'clock, right? We usually do about an hour.
Yes.
So Paul and Sarah, if you guys want to stay for questions, I would be more than grateful. If you have to go, I completely understand. And at this point, if you step out, you will not be rude or looked down upon, I promise. You guys have all the freedom in the world to go about your day. But Paul, Sarah, if you guys want to stay and answer some questions, I think we have a couple more.
I would like to say one more thing though. For those of you who have joined us on phone and can't see the chat, we will put the relevant links and information into an email and send it out to those of you who joined us today. Okay?
Yeah, you know, we can actually just save the whole entire chat and push it out so you guys don't have fear of missing out. And Sandy always does an amazing job of getting the recording up as soon as possible too. So we'll send all of that out to you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so what other questions do we have?
We have got another one. Let me find it here. And this is from Christian. And he asks, what impact would a Stat Day e-bank have on payday loans? I guess I'm not really sure what a Stat Day e-bank.
I think it's like a payday loan that's state, I take from that it's like a state payday loan. Perhaps Sarah and Paul, you guys might have a better answer. That's a guess.
Kristen still on board?
I don't see him.
I think, yeah, Paul's still on board.
It
No,
sounds
Chris.
like it was a typo for state bank, not stat A.
Oh,
Yeah, it's just,
okay, great. Thank you. Payday loans happen when people don't have access to banks. If they don't have access to credits, there are a lot of people in this state that are either unbanked completely or underbanked, and that means that they don't have a relationship with a bank. They weren't brought up with putting their pennies into a savings account and going to a bank for small loans. And we're hoping there would be a huge impact because the state bank has a lower cost of living, as I explained earlier. It can make loans at less cost to the community bank or the credit union, which would encourage them to be able to make lower cost loans as well. If you don't have a bank and your dishwasher breaks and you need $300, or your stove breaks or whatever it breaks, or your tires go, and you need that money, you have to go to a payday loan. And that's why you will find payday loan people in almost every community in New Mexico. They're there. They may not have a bank there, but they have payday loan people. And that's because we've globalized our banking system in this country to such an extent that the little people who, and I hate saying that word, but if you're not global, they consider you to be not worthy of their business, which is too bad. Hi, Paul. And so we really do hope that having a public bank is going to increase the number of community banks and credit unions, or allow them to establish branches in areas that are underbanked completely. And doing it that way and making small loans under $500 loans, making loans under $1,000, which currently you can't get. That's why people use their credit cards so much. That problem will go away over time.
Credit unions are opposed to payday lending, and many of our credit unions do have small dollar loan programs at lower interest rates. The problem is that the payday lenders make it so easy to get the money that the individuals would rather walk in the door, get the money quickly, and walk back out. They can even do it online for that matter, where the credit union wants to establish a relationship with the individual to help them live better and grow their level of financial independence. Well, as it's been pointed out, when you need the money for the broken appliance or the tires or the car repair, you take the path of least resistance. We do know that people don't always choose the right path for their financial lives, and that's something that's up to the individual. But as far as the state bank or the public bank is concerned, one of the biggest contributions to doing away with payday lending is the fact that the state bank will help grow jobs and good jobs in New Mexico, which certainly would do a lot to help individuals who are living paycheck to paycheck. So I think it could have an impact there, but I'm not sure that the payday lending close up and run away once we established a public bank.
Let's see, the last question that I have here is for, I think it's clearly for Sarah. Do you have a way to notify us, hopefully, when a bill is introduced for public bank? I think, Sarah, you'll be all over that.
Yes, actually, I do. Our website is www.aflep.org. I put it in the chat. And if you go there and simply sign up for our newsletters, you will have full notification. You will also you will be able to see the list of endorsers. If you are part of a group or a business that you think would like to endorse, let us know. We'd be happy to talk with them and see if we can get all their questions answered. We are beginning now to ask for resolutions from local governments across the state, so look for that. If you give us your email, your zip code and possibly your address, we will be able to let you know what your senators and city councilors and county commissioners, what's before them. So we'd be absolutely delighted to work with you at any time. Thank you. Great question.
Great.
And
Well,
I'm
I
just
think
going to make one plug here. Senate District 19 is now an open seat. We have 2 candidates, and this one is a very strong supporter of public banking.
and
we
lots of other
accept
good
endorsements.
issues too.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
So I think our time is up, guys, and I think we could go for like 4 more hours with all the questions, but I think we'll let everybody get on with their day. Sandy was great enough to put a bunch